Welcome. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can quickly and easily perform a user access review of your OCI tenancy. If you're watching this, I'm sure you've been asked to answer these questions before. What users exist and what groups do they belong to? What does my OCI tenancy compartment structure look like? What policies have users explicitly created? What permissions do users have in my tenancy? And are there any excessive or non-compliant policies and permissions in my tenancy? The challenge. Performing a user access review is largely a repetitive task and is only valid at the time it was completed, during which, or after, staff are onboarded, offboarded, and sometimes third parties are granted access to your environment. So how do you quickly at a glance understand what permissions a user has in an environment? The biggest issue is that these complex relationships can't be easily represented and interpreted in a table-like format. In the OCI ecosystem, users can be federated with an identity provider and can belong to one or many federated or local IAM groups. Policies can be defined for any user or for a group, and policies are inherited, meaning that they apply to all subcompartments from which the policies are applied. To make things easier, I've created a solution using Oracle tools and services to take the legwork out of performing a user access review. In this video, I'm only going to show the output and explain how to interpret the visualizations. If you're interested in setting this up and running this for your own tenancy, please read the remainder of my blog post. Okay, so you've followed the instructions and the script in the Docker container is run or is currently running. I'm going to log into my Apex instance and I'm going to take a look at the permissions in our test environment. Simply select a user from the drop-down menu and the tree diagram will appear. This tree diagram represents your tenancy compartment structure. If we work from left to right, the first dot here is the user. The next dot here represents the groups that the users belong to. And as you can see, I have some federated group mappings, so these are also shown here. The next dot is our root compartment or tenancy. And as you can see, we've explicitly granted all users access to certain resources in our tenancy in line with our environment use cases. These policies will also be applied to all subcompartments. If we take a look at the rest of the tree structure, we see some red, we see some orange, and we see some gray dots. These dots represent the highest level of permission explicitly granted to a user group which this user belongs to at that point in the compartment structure. Red means a policy has been written that grants a user manage rights for a resource or resource type for that compartment and any subcompartments. Orange means that use rights have been granted at and from that compartment. Yellow means read permissions have been applied, and green means inspect permissions have been applied. The gray boxes mean that no explicit policies have been written for that compartment. However, as you can see, these subcompartments show the inherited permissions from the parent. If there are multiple statements for a compartment, such as a manage and inspect permission, the dot will be red, as it shows the highest permission grant applied. So how does this help? I can now easily select a user and see what compartments have permissions applied for a group of which this user belongs, and also any user. I could at any point in the tree see what are the effective permissions for both explicit and inherited policies. I can quickly identify which compartments perhaps have two permissive policies, such as some that I created here for any user manage AI service forecasting family. I can easily identify if a user has permissions to a compartment or resource that perhaps isn't compliant with my policies. And if there are any identified permissions that aren't in line with my policies, I can easily spot where the policy has been applied by looking at the colored dots. Now let's take a look at the raw data which is used to generate the user's permission trees. Clicking users and groups will show all the local and federated OCI users and which groups they belong to. I can easily perform a full text search and also download this data in multiple formats, including CSV, HTML, PDF, and Excel. Clicking IAM policies shows for a specific user or for all users what policies have been explicitly written and from which compartment in the tenancy structure that those policies apply. Clicking compartments will show all the compartments in your tenancy, their name, the description, and the full path to that compartment. In summary, Peak allows you to visualize your OCI tenancy structure, audit your OCI tenancy users, understand what groups users belong to, identify what a user can do in a compartment or subcompartment based on explicit and inherited permissions, identify non-compliant policies that grant too much access, and understand where those non-compliant policy statements have been applied. If you are an OCI customer and have any questions, please feel free to contact me at scott.fletcher@oracle.com.